Hello, everyone, and welcome to our XR Talks, XR Southwark Talks. Tonight, we are very lucky to have with us Isabel Losada, who's going to be talking through her book, The Joyful Environmentalist. My name is Ben. I'm a coordinator at Extinction Rebellion Southwark. You, at the moment, won't be able to make any sounds because you're all on mute. But in a bit, we will be open after Isabel's talk. We'll be opening up the chat so people can actually ask some questions. But as a quick agenda, I'm just going to talk through a little bit about Extinction Rebellion, just a quick sort of 5 minute introduction, and then we'll hand over to Isabel, who's going to be doing a talk for around 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open it out to any questions that people want to ask. There is an opportunity, if there's a button somewhere to raise a hand, if anyone specifically wants to raise a hand, and I will see if I can find you. But just to quickly carry on. So Extinction Rebellion, if you might be aware who we are. I know many rebels are joining us tonight, but essentially Extinction Rebellion is a non-violent, direct action civil protest organization. And the aiming is to elicit governmental action on the climate and ecological crisis. The greatest hits are the April Rebellion in 2019, which had over 1,300 arrests. The October Rebellion, which many people will remember was a bit more of a wetter affair in 2019, and had about 1,700, with obviously George getting arrested there. And obviously, most recently in September, we had the 2020 Rebellion, which was obviously right in the middle of COVID, and actually had about 600 arrests there. So obviously lots going on. The 3 demands of Extinction Rebellion, which many of you know about, but let's talk about them again. Tell the truth about the ecological crisis and declare a climate emergency. Actually, after the April Rebellion, that happened very quickly, and the UK did declare a climate emergency, and then put the emergency at 40 years away, which was not the most dramatic reaction. But over 300 local authorities have now declared climate emergencies and are aiming for net zero by 2030, or potentially even earlier. Obviously, the second demand there is the greenhouse gas net zero and halting a biodiversity loss by 2025. And that's a line in the stand from Extinction Rebellion. It is only 5 years away, obviously quite dramatic, but putting that out there has enabled a lot of other organizations to be able to push for slightly less dramatic changes, and it's definitely moved the conversation forward. The third demand is actually saying we don't have any of the answers, but lots of specialists out there do. So rather than trusting the government to make decisions, we should be putting together a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. And interestingly, a citizens' assembly was undertaken, and the results were published last month. And it's interesting to go and have a look at some of those views. It's not a citizens' assembly as per Extinction Rebellion's definition, as in it doesn't actually have teeth, and the government doesn't actually have to do anything about what the citizens' assembly recommends. But the fact that it has happened is obviously quite a good step forward. If you are interested in finding out more, there's a website called rebellion.earth. You can join that. If you're interested in finding the local group, there's a button on there which shows you how to find your local groups. Put in your postcode. XR Southwark do also have a website called xrsouthwark.earth, and there's a calendar there where you can find out all the stuff we're doing at the moment. And there's also a crowdfunder for any donations that anyone wants to put in, which is always very much appreciated. So there we go. That's a little bit of us. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to pass over to Isabel, who can introduce herself.
Good evening. I'm just hoping I'm going to be able to see people. Right. Hello. I can't see any faces, Ben. All I can see is you. Oh, there's some faces.
There you go.
Hello. I'd really appreciate if you'd make yourself visible, because otherwise I just end up looking at myself, and that's an experience which I'm sure you'll appreciate is not really what you want for half an hour just looking at your own face. Hello, lovely people. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know about you, I'm so zoomed out. So I really, really appreciate you being prepared to sit down and relax and put your computers on. And I promise I'll make it worth your while. So it's lovely to see you. There you go, I can just about see you all. Lovely. Okay, so it's a real pleasure to speak to you as an audience tonight, because since this book, The Joyful Environmentalist, came out, I've mainly been speaking, I was just saying to Ben, I've mainly been speaking to people who are not environmentalists I like to imagine I've been kind of gently, slowly but surely encroaching into Middle England, and I've really been talking to people who are not in the least converted and have zero environmental awareness. So it's really, really great to speak to people tonight who are on the case. And I'm not going to assume for one moment that I know more than you do. I'm just going to tell you what my approach is and pass on to you anything that I think that can be useful. So The Joyful Environmentalist is my 7th book, and most of my career has been exploring the subject of happiness. So when I came to look at the environment, I'd spent about 2 years reading all the environmental books, and I don't know how many of them you've read, but a lot of them are deeply, deeply depressing. They leave you wanting to kill yourself. No matter how good they are, the more you read, the more gloomy it becomes. And that has never been my approach. My approach, because because life is short, I've always been interested in happiness as a subject. And so this book was about how we can combine environmentalism with doing things that enrich our lives, because life is short, we're going to be dead soon. So I wanted to explore where those two points meet, if you like. So the quest was in The Joyful Environmentalist, and it looks like this, is to find all the things that we can do in every single aspect of our life that help the environment to the maximum and enhance our lives to the maximum. So the book is also funny. So what I want to do tonight is I'm going to do a different 20 minutes with you to what I normally do with environmentalists, as I say, because I know that you already know a lot. So I'm just going to talk very quickly, as quickly as I can, through some of the areas that I look at in here. So in no particular order, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a complete life transformation, so that every single aspect of our lives, every area everything we do, we're supporting the environment in one way or another. Because as I've gone around and I've met different environmentalists, I find that some of them are good in some areas and some of them are not, and some of them are good in others. I'm forever walking into environmentalist house, for example, and finding it full of plastic. And I know we're not looking at the minutiae. I know we're trying to look at the bigger picture, but I'm trying to look at everything. So, for example, let me take one example that I'm sure some of you will know about: banking. Now, I'd been banking with NatWest since I was 18 years old. And I was very loyal to NatWest. I don't know why, just force of habit, really. And so when I started to write The Joyful Environmentalist and I was looking at every aspect of my life, I thought, well, okay, let's look at looking at banking. So I wrote to my bank and I said, can you tell me, please, what is your policy regarding investment in the fossil fuel industry, etc.? And about 2 weeks went by, you'll be interested to know. And they eventually wrote back and they sent me a load of what you could loosely call gobbledygook that was very complicated, very difficult to understand. And they tried to talk to me about ring fencing and the difference between lending and investment. And I thought, I don't actually need to understand all this. Because then I thought, okay, let's look up which are the most ethical banks. So then I looked up, I found Triodos at the top of the ethical list. I wrote to them and said, can you tell me about your ethical investment and lending portfolio? And they said, yes, you can go to a link on this page. Here's a list of all the organizations that we invest in. No, we don't invest in the arms industry. No, we don't invest in this, all the baddies. And they're the ones at the top of the ethical list. So it was simple enough. I swapped my bank from an unethical bank to an ethical bank. And in that way, yes, I'm only one person, and yes, it's a small amount of people, but I believe all these things matter. So that's banking. And someone said to me on the radio, well, surely there's not much joyful in changing your bank. And I said, on the contrary, because I've never been proud of my bank before. I'm finally proud of my bank, and I'm not being paid by Triodos to say this, I assure you. So that's banking. Now, then there's our homes. Now, I think it was really ironic to me that here I was really studying how to be a good environmentalist, and I hadn't really looked at the energy efficiency of my own home. Now, it's interesting that you have Ben looking after you in Southwark, because Ben knows a lot about energy efficiency. But I really didn't know a lot. I was with an ethical provider. I was with a company called Good Energy. But I thought I've never had the government come to my house and do an energy proficiency test. I don't know what's good in my house and what's bad. So I had them come and do that. And then I went to interview my energy provider, who's Juliet Davenport, who runs Green Energy. Now, listen, here's something you might like to pay attention to. So I went to her. I did this interview. I asked her all the questions that you'd ask your energy provider if you got a chance to interview her one-to-one. And she gives some very good and articulate answers to all my questions. And then at the end of it, I thought, well, wait a minute. If I put this in the book, then a lot of people are going to change to Good Energy after they've heard this interview. I thought normally you'd get a referral fee for something like that. I wonder if there's a way I can pass on the referral fee to the person who's reading the book. And so I rang them up, and sure enough, so what I've managed to get for you, if you read this book and you're impressed with Juliet Davenport and you go to her and you say, I'd like to be with Good Energy, I've arranged for Good Energy to give you, get this, £100 worth of organic wine from a company called, what are they called? Vintage Roots. So Appendix 4. So this has to be the only book where you could spend £10 on a book and get £100 back on organic wine, either to drink or to give to your friends and colleagues as Christmas presents. So I thought that was a bit of a bonus, Appendix 4. If you're not already with a Good Energy company, and if you are, and you know, and you've got friends that are thinking of changing to an ethical, sustainable energy company, then please let them know about this, because I can't tell you the satisfaction I have when readers send me photographs of themselves with their crate of £100 worth of organic wine. And of course, organic wine, because we're supporting the farming industry, we're supporting the organic farming industry, and we're supporting not putting chemicals on the land. So that's another area that I was looking at. So I'm looking at every single area. Now with plastic, I know it's, again, I don't know what you know and what you don't know. I don't know who I'm talking to, but lots of people think that plastic is a byproduct of the petroleum industry. Obviously, it's not a byproduct. It's a product of the petroleum industry. So every single time you buy something in plastic, did you know, I've just got the figures in the book, but the petroleum industry spends millions and millions of pounds paying people to make up new products in plastic that they then try and sell us. I've got a list in here of the ridiculous things that pop up. Now I've told you, you'll notice it when you're on social media. You'll go on and you'll see people trying to sell you ridiculous things. My favorite that I noticed, it was a watermelon cooler, a plastic pram that's designed to cool your watermelon when you're pushing it along. So it's full of water, and the water goes round and round and round, and it cools your watermelon. So it's actually people's job to persuade you to buy these products that are made of plastic. Their favorite trick over the last couple of years is to sell them as eco products. They put the word eco before everything. So there was a product I saw one day, I'm not jesting, an eco egg. And the idea with this egg, it's a plastic egg, and you break your egg into this egg. You should remove the shell, break your egg into there, put the egg in the plastic shell in the boiling water and boil your egg. I just not. And then, of course, there's the eco eggs that we're encouraged to put our soap powder in the washing machine. I mean, what is eco about a plastic egg? What is wrong with what my grandmother did was just put the soap in the washing machine. It works just as well. So I want you to be aware of the fact that people have a vested interest all the time in selling you plastic products all the time. Just watch. So it's really fun to avoid them altogether. So again, in the book, I have 32 examples of just simple swaps that you can do, ways to avoid buying plastic. Oh, here's one of my favorite examples right in front of me. I didn't even realize it was here. You know, somehow we've all got houses that lots of people have got 32 plastic biros in their houses. How do we be persuaded that we needed 32 plastic biros? You know, so an old-fashioned pen that's beautiful, that's made of metal. You know, so just everything in your life, just look at the plastic. Right, now, another thing that I talk about in the book a lot, that I'm sure you're onto this, but is clothing and is not. I see I've got some young people watching me tonight. Welcome, especially young people. Now, you've got to admire Greta Thunberg's stance on fashion and clothing. Greta Thunberg says, no new clothes, full stop. There's an absolute clarity in that. Boom, just don't buy new clothes. It's a wonderful 100% approach, you know, to it. But if you can't do that, then it's lovely to have a 9 to, I mean, I manage no new clothes except shoes. I'm still buying new shoes occasionally. But in the book again, I'm looking at, oh, I've got to look at the time. I've only got 20 minutes. Okay. I normally talk for longer than this, so I'm talking very quickly. I normally look at, I have a look at decluttering in clothing, because they say that we wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. So I really encourage you to look at your clothes, you know, in a decluttered way. Simplify your clothing, simplify everything. It's part of being an environmentalist, is to live more simply in every way. Look at removing clutter from your house, because the more we remove clutter, the less we are inclined to shop. And the more, and so this is all part of living a life that is in tune with the values of being an environmentalist in every aspect. And the more you do that, the more inspired people around you will be by the way you live, because they'll see that you're living a radically different lifestyle. Now, activism, I've got Ben was just talking about the April Rebellion now the nice thing about this book again is I tell the story of that April Rebellion from the point of view of being in a band, being in the samba band, because as I told you, I'm letting joy lead me. So I thought, well, what can I do in the rebellion that will be joyful and that will also make a difference? So I discuss the merits of being arrested, being not arrested, all that's in here. And I tell the story of that rebellion from the point of view of a foot soldier. And also I tell the newspapers, the way the newspapers tell the story, and also what was happening. And there's lots of interviews. So if you've got relatives and friends that are not in tune with your values regarding Extinction Rebellion and the environment, then I recommend this book. Listen, I'm not doing this to make money. I'll make 10p or something if you buy a book. So I believe it's not about, believe me, it's not about that. But it tells the story of that rebellion from the point of view of on the ground. And though I say so myself, it's a beautiful story. As you know, Greta arrives at the end. There's the part with her. There's the part where people are being arrested. There's the press. It's a good section, and that gives me the chance to look at activism as a subject and to explore it in a way that you can really do when you've got a whole book to write about something. You know, if you're just writing an article, you can't really explore it in depth. So, and there's a lovely expression in here that I interview a friend who's a climate scientist, and we talk about activism, and she says, be a little bit activist. Now, obviously, you are all a little bit activist, but I love that phrase because it doesn't sound overwhelming, doesn't sound intimidating, doesn't sound too much, but it does sound persistent, a little bit activist. I mean, you can almost feel the powers that be quaking slightly, because a little bit activist suggests being persistent and keeping going, being a little bit activist, but it also suggests less burnout. So that's activism. I'm looking at the clock. I've got 10 minutes to go. What else do I look at? Now, obviously, if we're looking at every aspect of our life and looking to benefit from it, travel is a really interesting one, because obviously people that have cars need cars. They don't have cars. Most people that drive a car don't just drive a car out of a desire to drive a 4x4. There's usually a reason they drive a car. For example, a friend of mine is a yoga teacher and she drives around, she has 30 yoga mats wherever she goes. So, you know, people that have cars on the whole need them. Now, one of my favorite questions in this that I ask on this subject is, if the environmental downturn is even worse than it's been predicted, if you drive a car and you couldn't afford to drive a car anymore, so you were forced by externals not to drive a car, what would you do then? And it's really interesting when you start to think creatively about these problems. So I'm always interested in things that enhance our life as solutions. For example, another thing I want to tell you about. Do you know, please, any of you that have got pens and taking notes, remember Pedal Me app. Pedal Me app is a wonderful way of getting around London now that is not, it's like Uber, but it's a bike with a seat on the front, and you phone them up and this guy comes round, and it, you know, guys, I think it's about 80% guys, some of them are women. He comes round and he's ready to take you from A to B, and it's like an Uber, but it's cheaper and faster and joyful. And it's just the best way to travel. And if you're either a young person or, like me, an old person in a young person, there's nothing I like more than traveling by Pedal Me app. You sit on the front and it's like, wee, you're going around all these corners. I wave like royalty as I go along with it. It's the most fun thing. And they can take quite a lot of stuff, or they can take you as a person. Pedal Me app, never get an Uber again, I promise you. Try it once and you'll be converted. Also, I haven't yet had a ride with Pedal Me app in the rain, but apparently they have hoods, and they have, you know, so you can still get a Pedal Me app if it's raining. But I promise you, sadly they finish at 7 o'clock at night. They don't work in the dark, but during the day, I'm never going to get an Uber or a taxi again in London. And going to Paddington by Pedal Me app, my absolute favorite. They can take you and a suitcase. They can take 2 people. They can take 3 young people. They can take, well, ask them if you ring them up what they can take. I think they can possibly even take 3 adults. This is one guy with his legs, and they have a little electric backup. So that's a little bit on. So you see where I'm going with this. I'm going into alternative ways to travel but that also enhance your life. So if you couldn't have a car anymore, you know, would you buy a cargo bike? Would you be forced to move house? What would you do if you run a car but couldn't afford to run a car? So I'm looking at enhancing life. Now, energy, there's a wonderful section in the book on energy where apparently I made some people cry when they read this bit, because I had a power cut. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I hadn't paid my bill, but no, it was an electrical fault. But we had no light in the house for 3 or 4 days. And no heating. And it might sound strange to say, but really it was the most fantastic adventure to live. You know, we would have to go to bed. You go to bed when it's dark, you get up when it's light. And it's a good education to learn to live without the energy sources that come into our house. It sets you thinking about energy in a different way. That's a little aside. Okay. This is trying to fit my whole talk. I've got another 4 minutes. Right, what else can I tell you about? Lifestyle, heating, banking. What have I missed out? Food. So the thing about food is it's such a huge area of our lives. And as people say, we have 3 votes a day with our food, because every time we buy food, every time we eat, we have a vote. Now, again, to quote Greta again, she's vegan, full stop, boom, that's it, simple. You have to admire such single-mindedness of mind, right? I'm also vegan, but if you're not vegan, or if you're vegetarian, or if you're a carnivore that likes to eat some meat, again, people say, well, how do I persuade my husband? How do I persuade my wife? How do I persuade myself that this way forward? So again, I'm saying, let joy guide you. Look in your Christmas in the back of here, because I'm talking about how to lead with joy. I wanted to give a list of 10 wonderful vegan cookbooks, and I couldn't choose because there's so many of them. So I ended up with a list of 15 recommended vegan cookbooks. If you're vegetarian or vegan in your life, the best way to and you know people that aren't, the best way to seduce them is through their palates, is to learn wonderful vegan or vegetarian cookery. If you're a meat eater, obviously start with meat-free Mondays and just once a week cook a gorgeous vegetarian meal and make it wonderful. Now, the other thing we need to bear in mind is if we want to support the planet and support our own health, we need to be buying organic food. Is it more expensive? Yes, it's a little bit more expensive. But personally, I don't drive a car, I don't have a TV, but the money that I do have, I put towards organic food. But because I believe it's important for us not to be putting chemicals on the land, I think it's important for us to be supporting Britain's organic farmers, and it's important for our health. So I think one way that we can do that every day is through buying organically. Personally, my food is delivered by Riverford. It's waste-free, it's plastic-free, and as far as possible, I try to go UK and seasonal. So I'm learning all kinds of weird and wonderful vegetables arrive. And I think, what on earth is this? And then I have to look it up and learn how to cook it. But they provide recipes, they provide cookbooks, they provide a very good service. So if you want an organic delivery, then I recommend Riverford in the book. And I go and interview again. They say, shake the hand that feeds you. So in this book, I go to visit Riverford, and I go and visit Guy Watson, who's very grumpy, who runs Riverford, and we talk about all the things that you would like to ask the person who provides your food if you got an opportunity to talk to them. So 3 minutes to go. I think I look at voting in the book. When I was writing the book, it was the run-up to the European elections. So I went out and did some canvassing for the Green Party. I'm a floating voter. I float between Green and Labour. But I went and spoke to lots of people about why I thought we should be putting the environment first. It's a very good exercise if you want to learn about your area, to go and canvass. You bang on doors. You certainly learn where people whether they put their money where their mouth is. And okay, so if there's anything else, it's not coming to my mind, but I hope you're understanding what I'm saying in letting joy guide us in our transformation of our lives from an environmental point of view. Oh, I've also got a section on gardening. I've got a section on what trees we need to plant in order to feed the birds, what flowers we need to plant in order to feed the insects best. Obviously, we need to look at Insectageddon. We need to look at nourishing our bird life. And we can do that just by planting trees with berry-bearing fruits. So I've got a lovely list of which trees produce which berries, which attract which birds. So the Joyful Environmentalist is a bit of everything. I just do a quick plug before we open up to Q&As, which is it does make a good Christmas present because it introduces anyone to the subject, and it's also funny. So it's not one of these environmental books that is going to make people feel gloomy. It makes people laugh. I promise you. There's 116 reviews on Amazon, so you can have a quick look if you want to check out what I'm saying. I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but it is funny and cheerful and informative, and has got as many solutions to the environmental crisis that we can make as I could possibly find to fit in. And if there's any that that if you read the book and you find them and they're not in there, please let me know. Okay, it's 19:30. Do you want to open it up to questions, Ben?
I do indeed. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Isabel. That was absolutely wonderful. And thank you very much for a quick fire run through the book. So yeah, as Isabel's mentioned, I've now opened up the chat. So if people want to put some questions into the chat, we can ask Isabel. We've already had a comment there, which is great to see. So that is from Davina. Davina loved your book. I had no idea there was such a genre as narrative nonfiction. You can also unmute yourselves as well if people want to shout out. So any questions for Isabel, please do.
Thank you to whoever's read the book. I can't see Davina. Where are you? I can't see you. You're hidden. But thank you very much.
You can press the buttons at the top and move along to see people.
Hi, I have a question. It's Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hello. Did you cover travel? Because that's one of the hardest ones.
Yes.
Flying, and particularly when you're talking to friends.
Well, I'll tell you what my personal solution is on travel, because it's just fantastically simple. I'm not doing any national flight. So I'm not flying within the UK. So if someone wants to invite me to speak in Inverness, they have to pay to get me there. It's as simple as that. And I said that I would only take an international flight every other year. That works for me. I'm not suggesting that none of us should go on holiday ever again. I took a promise last year that I wouldn't fly in 2020. I had no idea how easy it was going to be. But I don't think that we should never leave the country ever again. But as I don't know if you know that, but the majority of flight is undertaken by businesses, and they're all flying less and less because they've all discovered that they can work online. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how the aviation industry moves forward. of course, there's this famous, what they're thinking of doing. What I hope will happen is that people will get one free flight and after that they'll be taxed. That makes complete sense to me. So everyone can go on their family holiday if they want to, but people won't be flying backwards and forwards every other weekend for some silly business conference. So so that for me has been one of the easier choices. I think an international flight every other year makes sense for me.
And I think the lockdown has contributed to the joy of doing that almost, because people have found alternatives. You know, they've realised that there is fun to be had closer to home.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like this concept of, you know, finding joy in changes of behaviour. Yeah. And shopping as well. So many people have said to me, you know, actually, yeah, I used to get so much joy out of shopping, but don't really care now. I don't think I need all that stuff.
Yeah, we don't need any stuff. The thing is with our clothes is they say that we've all got enough clothes to last us for the next 10 years. And we know that because we very rarely see people walking the streets with no clothes on. So we know that everyone has clothes. We've got enough clothes. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
My wife probably suggests that I do need to buy some more clothes because I
haven't
bought any clothes for the last 10 years. Steve, you've got a hand up. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Right, yeah, cheers. I love the book. It's, I think it raises more question in your head than actually answers quite a lot, because even on things like plastics, one of the joys of my life is vinyl. I love music and I love vinyl. So
right.
I have lots and lots of plastic in my house on that. So alternatives to that would be...
Are they still making vinyl? Are you buying new vinyl?
I'm with you on that, Steve. That's one of my guilty pleasures as well. So
yeah. That's really interesting.
I've got a vinyl back here that you can't see, but I think vinyl, just to put it out there, vinyl probably hangs around. I've got records from the 30s in my record collection, so I think vinyl is one of those ones that's going to hang around. It's not a single-use plastic.
It's certainly not single use.
It's not single use, that's for sure.
No. I think it's the same. I think vinyl and things like that is similar to books. Like some people have an absolute aversion to getting rid of books. And I'm actually all for decluttering books, because if we get rid of the books that we don't like and we're never going to reread, then we really see the ones that we love. And I'm sure the same must be true with your vinyl collection. I wonder if you've listened to all of it, Steve.
Well, all 2,000 of them. Not
exactly.
No.
You possibly don't need to buy any more for quite some time, a bit like the clothes.
Oh, I don't know. Once you've got the bug, it gets you. The other point, I think probably a more serious point, is before I retired, I used to be what was called a standards engineer, where you used to travel a lot for international meetings.
Yes.
And the reason that we used to travel rather than, because they did have things like conferencing and stuff like that, electronic conferencing. The reason that we didn't do that is that time zones.
Yeah.
So if you have a meeting at say 6 o'clock, say 9 o'clock in the morning in this country, in America, on the East Coast, that's 3 o'clock in the morning, or, you know, the middle of the night in Australia. So to make it simpler, people used to just travel around the world, and therefore you're not putting people out. So sometimes...
Is this a question, Steve?
No, I just mean it's like I think sometimes you can make statements and they seem like they're obvious statements, but sometimes it's not obvious. There are. Well,
I've got a friend that organises international film festivals, and believe me, it's possible to have a film festival and to get people from all the. Sure, people have to get up sometime at 4 a.m, and sure they have to be up till 2, but everything is possible, and everything is better than flying around the world and destroying the atmosphere. So, but yes, it's. I would challenge you personally, Steve, to spend a year just listening to the 2,000 records you already have before buying any new ones.
There is a challenge, Steve.
And enjoy the 2,000 ones you already have. Can we take a question from the young people, please?
That's what I was going to say, Angela. Thank you very much for that. Quite a kid. Would you like to ask a question?
Hi, I'm Isla, and I'd like to ask.
Isla.
How do you balance activism and doing like individual action? So like, is it worth spending time trying to source things that aren't made in plastic when you could be spending that time on activism?
I wouldn't spend time sourcing things that aren't made of plastic. No, I wouldn't. What I would do is, if you need to, because you don't want to destroy the things you already have that are perfectly good if they're made of plastic. It's only if they're broken then it's if you need to replace something, then it's good to find a non-plastic alternative. I think for you, it's especially difficult, the balance of activism and non-activism. I mean, of course, I encourage you to be active, and there is a balance, to be made. You don't want to do it very much to your own detriment. So, I applaud very much your desire to be active, and I encourage you to look at particularly at the intended results of actions. How do you work out what is an action that you want to give your time to, and what is an action that you don't want to give your time to? So look very carefully to what is this action trying to achieve, and is it reasonably achievable? Is it possible to achieve a certain result from this action? And who is an action speaking to? So these are all things that you need to consider when you're deciding which activism to give your time to. But no, I wouldn't spend time looking for non-plastic. I just keep an eye open when you're out. If something breaks, don't replace it with plastic. And don't be fobbed off by anyone trying to sell you anything plastic that you don't need. Simple as that, And
if you do have stuff, keep using it until it's gone.
Until it falls apart. And then, yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Isla. Just so this is vinyl. This is one of my favourite albums, the Blues Brothers album.
Yes.
This is from about 1980 something. Oh no, yeah, 1980. There we go. So that's 30 years old, right there.
I'm quite excited by that. I can see I'm probably more excited by the challenge I've set Steve than he is. But the idea of having to listen to 2,000 vinyls you already have.
Isabel, I have a question. What was the hardest thing for you? To give up or to put aside? Or
I think the interesting one, the hardest thing is it links into what I was just saying to Isla, is that the hardest thing for me is saying no to actions, maybe Extinction Rebellion, or comes up with an action that someone has come up with, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I don't think that action is effective. I like to be for things rather than against things. So if an action is attacking something or someone, then I tend to not want to participate. If it's for things, then I want to participate. For example, I love guerrilla gardening. It's a very naughty activity where you go out, sometimes in the middle of the night, you get rid of a load of litter, you put down a load of compost, and you plant plants where you're not supposed to. It's very wicked. I'm waiting to be arrested. Ha, ha, ha. But I don't think anyone is really going to arrest me for planting things where they're not supposed to be. But I think the hardest thing is discerning where to give our time and our energy to. That's the hardest thing in our journey forward, and which is why I like to use joy as my guide, because I don't want to burn out and I don't want anyone else to burn out. And I think we need to work out how to encompass this with whatever it is we do in our life. Like, these young people that are at school, how can you combine your desire to be great environmentalists with what you're doing at school? So if you've got to do a project, how can you do a project where you're also learning about the environment? If you're a dentist, how can you be a dentist and also a good environmentalist? If you're an economist, how can you be an economist and a good environmentalist? How can we weave these two together in a way that is both effective and joyful?
Wonderful, thank you. On that note on planting, it's interesting actually you say about leading with joy. The two groups in XR Southwark that have been constantly doing stuff all the way through lockdown, I think everyone else has relatively gone into hibernation.
Biodiversity group.
They are the guerrilla gardeners and the drummers actually.
Oh, so yes.
It's interesting. I'm actually going to say I'm going to do a little plug now, because I'm going to put it just says free. We're actually Extinction Rebellion as a network has put together a free oak tree campaign. We've been buying up oak trees that we're going to get get mulched because the government didn't buy them, and we're distributing them. So if anyone wants an oak tree, I'll put a link on there. We're getting 200 delivered to Southwark tomorrow, to my flat, and then we're going to dish them out. So across the XR network, there's 30,000 oak trees that are going to get planted over the next couple of weeks.
You need quite a lot of space.
Yes, that's all right, Myrtle. It's fine. We talked about this. It's fine.
You know, there's a lovely saying that I'm sure you all know that I'll corrupt to oak trees. It's not quite the expression, but when is the best time to plant an oak tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. Exactly. And when is the next best time to plant an oak tree? Is now. Exactly, so yes. Good luck with finding places to plant your oak trees.
Yeah. We've got most of them, to be honest. Actually, 100 going to a local NHS organisation, and
wonderful. That's a wonderful action.
Their gardens outside of Southwark.
Good. And make sure, I'm a local tree warden as well. And the thing about planting trees is lots of people want to plant them, but not many people want to water them once they're planted. And it's very important, especially with young trees for the first 2 years, and especially if there's a drought, is to go out and water the young trees in your area. Just take them a bucket of water every now and again. Anyway, sorry, let's have another question because we're running out of time. Lobbying has also continued.
That was Eloise plugs for the lobbying group as well, who have also been doing work engaging with Southwark Council. So thank you, Eloise, for highlighting that. Any other questions? Do feel free to shout out or have a chat. I'm sure I can think of lots more.
Who's the person here who's read my book already? That's very lovely. Thank you.
I've ordered it.
Oh, that's also lovely. Thank you.
Hasn't
It's such a good book, Isabel. I really liked it. I bought it in the Lake District when I was there a few weeks ago.
I can't see who's talking.
That's Davina. If you press.
Oh, I see you, Davina. Sorry, I see you. Yes, thank you for Davina.
What was your favourite part of it, Davina?
I don't know. I wrote down some notes on my phone as I was going along, just like some lifestyle changes and stuff. But I think, I don't know, like just the finance thing was really interesting, and like reallocating your ISAs and the Triodos Bank points. I thought that was really useful, and also just liked hearing about like the NEP safaris, which has made me want to visit it.
Oh, I didn't mention NEP, did I? Yes, well, that's to do with rewilding that Ben will know about. Yeah. That's at the end of the book. Because I was looking for positive things all the way through the book. One of the most positive things I found was the rewilding project that's happening at NEP, which is you'll see about in the book. I mean, what's lovely about this book, though I say so myself, is that I hope there's something in it for everyone. Somebody wrote to me the other day saying they bought their first compost heap. I thought bin. I thought, right, well, now I can die in peace because someone bought their first compost bin, and they're learning, about how to compost, how to create this wonderful magic stuff called living earth. So thank you very much, Davina.
I would say actually,
Sarah had a question. Sarah was waving a minute ago.
Oh, Sarah did have a question. Sorry, I forget Sarah.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Hi, Isabel.
Hi, Sarah.
I wanted to ask you, how do you spread the climate emergency message with joy? Because I find this is the hardest thing, is talking to people who I think understand that there's a climate crisis, but are in their life, in their bubble, and don't want to make any changes and don't really feel that it's up to them to make changes. And it's really difficult talking to friends and family. And I find it really difficult to be positive because it always seems to be about not buying new presents, not buying clothes, not going on flights, not driving your car, all those things.
Well, again, at the risk of being glib, I buy them this book because there's so many ideas in. And the other thing I wanted to say to you is you can email me, Isabel@isabellosada.com, or you can find. I'll write my social media things down on here. What I'm doing is I'm painting book plates to go in the front. So what I do is I'm personalizing them. So, where's my little book plates? So if you've got a friend called Jane and you're called Sarah, for example, where are they? Oh, I can't see them now. Oh, I can't see them. Oh, they should be on here. No, can't see them. All right. Well, they look a bit like this. So it's a little painted book plate. Oh, no. What I do is I write around I've made them with carrots. I hope you're all impressed. It's like potato printing, except done with carrot. So, and then I write around the edge, to Anna, love you, whatever your name is, and then also signed by me. So what that means is that when your friends get their Christmas presents and they've got it dedicated from you and me with their name. So it just makes it a bit more special, you know, as a Christmas present. So if any of you are interested in those for your friends or family for Christmas presents, just let me know. I'll just give you my social media tags here. This is my email.
Thank you, Isabel. Whilst you're doing that, I'm just going to read out some of the comments. So, and Andrea says, being for and not against sounds good, but it's tricky when lots of mature, healthy trees get chopped down.
Yes,
in
I know.
Council, Merton. Yeah, I mean, it is something that we need to, you know, again, shout out to the lobbying group. You know, there's a lot of XR groups are lobbying their local councils and trying to stop habitat destruction. And actually, we should be restoring nature. And this is what the rewilding.
Yeah, I'm a tree warden in Wandsworth, so I know all about that. They're chopping down hundreds of them.
Angela, I think this might be from Isla again. How can I use joy to inspire people to join my school's environment club? At the moment, it's only 4 of us.
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, by having fun activity, by making the activities fun. Like, for example, this, I would have thought this, maybe there's a link up with planting oak trees. That sounds like a fun thing to do. Anything that you do that's fun, talk about. I would have thought some of your friends that have been stuck indoors for ages and are bored of school might like to go out and plant some trees, because that's the thing about planting a tree, Isla, is it has an instant feeling, a good feeling. You know, it makes you feel good because you plant it and then it's done, and then you look at it and you've got an instant response. You've planted a tree where there was no tree. It's magic, there's a tree. So something like that that's fun. And also you have to think of something called the cost benefit scale. So you have to think of what will also benefit your people to join your group. So, for example, if you can combine it with things that they've got to do at school anyway, like school projects, essays, music, like learning about trees. Are there any subjects at school that this can get you credit on? You know, because obviously I realize when you're in school, you're also very busy. You have a lot of demands on your time. So I think fun would be one thing, would be one way. Just make sure you do fun things as far as possible. And the other thing is, yes, is combining it with, I talk to, see if you can get 1 or 2 staff on side. Because if you've got a number of members of staff on side, that might help you. I don't know if you've done that. You've probably done that already, because I'm sure you're way ahead. I've just been reading a book called The Diary of a Young Naturalist. I don't know if you've read that book. Yes. Because he started with very few, didn't he? When he started the group in his school, he says he started with very few and then it grew. Yeah. But it's a bit like any group. It has to be fun things to do, and then your friends will invite one person and they'll invite one person, and it will grow.
And if you do want some oak trees, Isla, just get your mum to drop me an email on that link, and you can have as many as you want, basically, and take them to school.
Have you got any grounds? Have you got any grounds in your school? That would be a good way to get publicity for your group. Would be if your group was responsible for taking trees to the school.
Yeah, we did. We were going to do some planting last year, because we've got a little bit that's just like soil, but then obviously lockdown. So hopefully I will see.
Great.
The other one I'm putting a link on to a thing called Less CO2, which is run by Ashton Awards, and that's a proper organisation that works with schools. So if you go in there, you need to find a teacher who's up for doing it. But then if you find a teacher who's happy to support you, they can apply, and then there's a whole program that they take the school through, and there's loads of activities they can suggest and everything. So definitely have a look at Less CO2.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Sounds great.
No problem at all. Thank you for the questions.
Okay, I'm just sorry. I did my own Instagram address wrong. So there we go. So that's just to contact me if you want some personalised labels with your friends' names on.
Brilliant. XR Families also do an activity advent calendar, apparently, which has ideas. So there's lots of stuff for schools and families, which is all good.
Cool.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Steve still has the hand up, but I think that's probably from before.
Sarah, did I answer you? Sorry, it was a cheap and easy answer, wasn't it? But it's you've got to try Pedal Me. When I went to my friend's house and I turned up on this Pedal Me app, you know, they'll love it that I'm plugging them so much. But that to me is such a great example of joyful environmentalism. It's such fun to ride on their bikes, and there's so many wonderful things that I've done, and so much of it is also money saving. Try, you're not with Good Energy. Try telling them they can change to Good Energy and getting £100 worth of free organic wine. That might also, show that you're not suffering too much in your environmentalism. And as I say in the book, we do need to be drinking more organic French wine. It's our duty as environmentalists to support the farming industry by drinking more organic wine, unless you're an alcoholic, in which case just eat more organic food. So there's always joyful ways that we can support the environment.
So Elizabeth is saying that she really enjoyed the book and does plan to use it to explain to her family and friends what being at the rebellion was like, and try to get them to do more positive things in the environment.
Oh,
so
thank you. The environment, the environment, the bit about the rebellion really tells the story of the rebellion from the inside. So people who are very anti-extinction rebellion, if they read this, they won't be by the end, because it's just full of so many wonderful stories about things that people did during the rebellion.
Davina's asked if you've got a favourite wine that you could recommend. Eco wine, obviously.
Well, in the book, I recommend biodynamic wine. So that's the next level on from organic wine, but it's a bit difficult to find. But again, it's a bit like me having been banking with a high street bank for years blindly. I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that I think the main criteria that I've been buying my wine with for many years is that's an attractive label, or or that's got a gold medal. And so I've not been differentiating by wine that gets flown half the way across the world, and wine that's made in England or France or Europe. And I think it's not as if the French don't have a rich wine tradition. We're not going to suffer if we drink French wine. And since I've also organic wine often has less sulfates or no sulfates in it, and so you get less hangovers as well. So it's another benefit. So anything organic from France or from Italy, and I believe the white English organic wine is quite good, although I have trouble buying it locally. I haven't found any English red organic wines yet, but I'm sure there are some.
There's a wonderful German one, or Viennese, I think it's Austrian, biodynamic, called Grüne Veltliner. They drink a lot of Grüne Veltliner anyway in Vienna, but this particular one I found on a menu in whatever the name of that, I forget what it is, but it's near Sadler's Wells restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I tell a great story about biodynamic wine in the book, and I explain the difference between organic and biodynamic. And biodynamic is like extreme organic, and even though the wine industry tried to poo-poo it in blind tests, it always came out on top. And they do things like they pay attention to when they pick the grapes and the earth and the community and the whole shadoodle.
Well, it's delicious, I can tell you this one.
Brilliant. So obviously I was getting trained on what to do in terms of School Street, so that's great. Well done. Let's keep that going. I would say, I mean, I'm interested. I've been an energy efficiency consultant for the last 12 years, and I've only in lockdown I've done what you did. I changed from NatWest to Triodos just because it took some time to think about it and doing it. So kind of what I've sort of got to is, not trying to be too, it is about the happiness, it's about the joy, and it's not because it can get quite stressful and quite upsetting being green and be very, so I've always said to myself is, doing one thing at a time, doing little bits, they all kind of add up over time. Single-use plastics was a big one for me, whereas my wife kills me about every kind of shopping. I decided to get rid of single-use practice. I'd go through every time, kind of identify one or two different things that I could find a replacement for, and over time slowly got rid of most of the plastics, and then everything else I put into an eco brick, which is basically a plastic bottle where I put all my single-use plastics. I've got a big store of them up for the roof. I'm going to build.
Very good. Well, I've got 32 suggested swaps in here.
Fantastic.
In the book, just as a list.
That sounds really good.
Yes.
Any other questions, or should we call it? I think we might wrap it up. But
has anyone not spoken that would like to speak? There's someone waving there. Precious.
I am at a point in life that I really need to declutter.
Ah, yes.
And but to me, everything is really necessary. What I have, I don't want to let go of anything. It's really difficult. And so I take on board this business of joyful decluttering.
Yes.
And So I just wonder if you have some suggestion.
I have so many suggestions about decluttering, Precious. It's one of my great passions. There's a lot about decluttering in the book. I don't know if you get hold of the book, there will be some inspiration for you there. One of my suggestions is if you find it overwhelming, then just do it 1 hour at a time. Just do 1 hour and then leave it. Like I have a confession which I'm happy to make to you all, that even though I'm what I consider to be an advanced declutterer, I had put off the cassette problem. I put it off for years because I just knew that in order to get rid of the cassettes, I was going to have to listen to them and I was going to have to record them on my phone. And because it took altogether about 4 days, but I'd got cassette recordings of my daughter when she was little, that I just kept for years and years and years. And I no longer had a cassette recorder, of course. So I had to borrow a cassette recorder from my friend and I had to sit and listen to them. And I spent 4 days, but they're all re-recorded and now they're gone. But the point I'm making to you, Precious, is doing things, just do 1 hour. Just do 1 hour so you can, because then it won't feel overwhelming. You can look at one corner, one job that you know needs doing, do it for an hour, then sit down, have a cup of tea, do your favorite activity. And the other thing, just that's slightly less joyful, but certainly works for me, is I always say to people, please think, if you were to get run over crossing the road tomorrow, who would it fall to have to go through every single item that you own?
I know, that's the main thing.
It's a big, and I'm a single parent with an only child, and I often my objects and I think I don't want her to have to go through that. And adults, when you've been through that, when you've lost a relative and you've had to clear a house, so do those that you love a huge favor and do the job now. Start now with your objects and go through, and it's all part of being an environmentalist, because the less you have, the less you want to acquire, and you realize that why do you have this object? Why is it here? And how do you know? You say that they're all useful, but I challenge you. It's a bit like Steve with his 2,000 records. How do you know?
Diaries.
You've got lots
of diaries and files.
A lot of what? Sorry?
Diaries.
I write diary.
Oh, diaries.
Diaries.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you don't have to throw those away, maybe.
No.
Well, no. I mean, but I'm sure the majority of your house is not full of diaries. But I encourage you to look at the things that you love and choose those and get rid of things that you don't love anymore.
Yeah. If you haven't used stuff, what we sometimes do is when we declutter is if you haven't used it for more than 3 years, you probably don't need it. So you could have started by 5 years and then 3 years and then a year.
Exactly. And you feel so much better, Precious. You feel so much better. If anyone's feeling overwhelmed, one of the things that's really, really psychologically helps you, I know it sounds crazy, but it does. It's clear space. It clears space in our homes, and it works then with our minds, and you just feel better. Going to the plastic tapes. Our problem is that the stuff isn't gone. The plastic tapes still exist. The cassettes do still exist. That's true. They do. They will go to energy from waste, and tragically, they will be burned, which I'm not proud of. But all I can say is, I've had them 20 years, and I'm not going to be buying any more.
It does feel like a convenient move. Thank you for that, Anna. But it is a good thing to look at as well. And I think Angela's very happy that she has to explain what a cassette is to Isla and kids.
Yes.
So,
or old technology. I mean, another of my tips is label your wires. Label your wires, or else you end up with one of those drawers that everybody has. I do a lot about this. If those of you who are on Instagram, you want to look at my Instagram, you'll see all I do lots of decluttering tips on there. But lots of people have a drawer that's full of electric wires for things, for old technology, and the wires aren't labeled. So nobody knows what they can get rid of and what they can't get rid of, because they don't know which plug goes with which object. So get a little piece of paper and label your cables.
I feel like we could probably have lots and lots of tips, but thank you, Isabel. I think we should call it time because it is the hour, but thank you very much for your time. That's been absolutely fantastic. Any last words of wisdom you want to leave everyone with?
Yes, find ways to make your environmentalism joyful.
There we go.
And it's a whole life transformation. It affects everything we do and everything we say and everything we own and everything we buy and every choice we make. And yes, life is short, so it's important for us and for the planet.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for your time. That was absolutely amazing. Everyone, this is being recorded, so it will go up on YouTube if anyone wants to rewatch it. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And Isabel, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll
Take
see
care,
you all
everyone.
on social
Have a lovely
media.
evening. Happy Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye all.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Isabel. I will drop you a note when I put everything up online, but I really appreciate your time. That was actually wonderful.
Pleasure. I hope I'll see some of you on social media.
Brilliant. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.